So picture this, a world where having more nuclear weapons actually leads to more peace. Sounds completely insane, right? Well, the guy who made that exact argument wasn't some fringe thinker. He was Kenneth Waltz, one of the most important political scientists of the 20th century. And his ideas, well, they didn't just add to the conversation, they completely flipped how we think about war, peace, and global power.
I mean, just look at this headline. Why Iran should get the bomb. Now, what if I told you this wasn't from some random corner of the internet? This was published in Foreign Affairs, maybe the most respected foreign policy magazine out there. And it was written by the man himself, Kenneth Waltz. This gives you an idea of the kind of thinker we're dealing with.
So the big question is, how? How does a brilliant, respected scholar arrive at a conclusion that just sounds so incredibly dangerous? Well, that's the puzzle we're going to piece together. And to do that, you have to understand the man and, more importantly, the powerful, almost ice-cold logic he constructed. Get ready to see the world in a totally new light.
Okay, before we dive into all the theories about bombs and the balance of power, let's just take a second to meet the man behind them. Because, to really get his ideas, you kind of have to understand the conflicts that shaped him.
Check out this timeline. Waltz served in World War II and then got called up again for the Korean War. You'd think that experience would make him a military hawk, wouldn't you? But he did the complete opposite. He actually became a major critic of American military intervention. Those wars convinced him that conflict wasn't some simple story of good versus evil. No, it was about the cold, hard, structural forces that push nations around.
So let's get to his first really big breakthrough. Before Waltz could build his master theory of how the world works, he first had to break down the idea of war itself. He needed a kind of blueprint for why conflicts happen to begin with.
And this is the fundamental question he asks in his first major book. Just think about it for a second. Why do wars happen? Is it just because people are naturally greedy or aggressive? Or is it because some countries have bad governments, like dictatorships? For hundreds of years, those were pretty much the only answers. But Waltz was convinced everybody was missing the biggest piece of the puzzle.
And this right here is his brilliant framework. He basically sorted all the possible causes of war into 3 levels or images. The first image is all about individuals, human nature. The second image is about the states themselves, how they're governed. He said, yeah, both of these are part of the story, but they're not the whole story. For Waltz, the real driver, the ultimate cause of war, was hiding in that third image.
And here it is, the big breakthrough. Waltz argued that, really, the first 2 images are kind of a distraction. The real reason we have war, he said, has almost nothing to do with whether leaders are good or bad, or whether a country is a democracy or not. It's all about the system itself. It's about the global environment that all countries are trapped inside. This idea, it changed everything.
Let me put it this way. For centuries, thinkers called classical realists thought war was like a bar fight. It starts because some people are just aggressive. Waltz comes along and says, nope, you're looking at it all wrong. It's not about the people in the bar, it's about the bar itself. It's a dangerous place, and there's no bouncer. He called this new idea neorealism, and it forced everyone to stop looking at the actors and start looking at the stage they were on.
The first key feature of that stage is a concept he called anarchy. Now hold on, this doesn't mean chaos and riots in the streets. In international politics, anarchy just means there's no world government. There's no global 911 you can call if another country decides to invade you. No one is in charge.
And, okay, if there's no global 911, what do? Well, you're forced into a system of self-help. You have to look out for yourself, first and foremost. Every single country, from the tiniest island nation to the biggest superpower, is fundamentally on its own. You can't truly count on anyone else for your survival.
The last piece of this puzzle is what he called polarity. It's really just a fancy way of asking, how is all the power spread out? Is there one big boss on the world stage, what we'd call a unipolar world? Are there 2 heavyweights staring each other down, a bipolar world? Or are there a bunch of major powers all competing for influence, a multipolar world? For Waltz, the answer tells you almost everything about whether the world is heading for a period of peace or war.
All right, so we've got the building blocks. A world with no boss, or anarchy, where everyone has to fend for themselves, which is self-help, and where power is divided up in a certain way, or polarity. Now let's plug it all in and see how this cold, logical machine spits out some truly shocking conclusions.
And this is where it gets really wild. If you follow his logic, a bipolar world, like the Cold War, is actually pretty stable because the 2 big dogs keep each other in check. So the fall of the Soviet Union, Waltz argued, that was bad for stability because it left the United States as the only superpower, free to do whatever it wanted. And then comes the biggest shocker of all.
In a world of self-help, what's the ultimate survival tool? A nuclear bomb. It's the one weapon that can absolutely guarantee that a bigger country won't mess with you. It makes everyone think twice. So, from this cold, hard logic, more bombs could actually mean more peace.
Kenneth Waltz passed away back in 2013, but if you think his ideas went with him, you'd be dead wrong. In fact, in the world we live in today, his stark, sometimes brutal framework feels more relevant than ever.
I mean, just look at today's headlines. The growing competition between the US and China, that is a textbook shift from a unipolar world back toward a bipolar one straight out of Waltz's playbook. Russia's actions in Ukraine, Waltz would say that's a classic example of a great power operating in a self-help world, feeling threatened and lashing out. And of course, the debate over whether Iran should get a nuclear weapon, we are still arguing on the intellectual battlefield that Kenneth Waltz laid out for us decades ago.
So we're left with this really chilling question. As we enter a new era of competition between great powers, a more dangerous and uncertain world, was Kenneth Waltz right all along? Is global politics not really about trying to build a better world, but just about surviving in a tough system that forces every country to look out for number one? You might not like his conclusions, but in the 21st century, you definitely can't afford to ignore his logic.